My wife threw divorce papers in my face while I was holding our newborn daughter. She looked at me with cold eyes and said, "I wanted a son, not a useless little girl." Her mom stood right behind her, nodding along. That was 6 years ago, and today karma finally came back for both of them. I'm writing this because I honestly don't know who else to talk to, and I just need to get it all out. My name is Mark. I'm 34, and 6 years ago, my whole world blew up in the span of about 5 minutes. To give you some background, I met my ex-wife Sarah in our mid-20s. We hit it off right away, or at least that's what I thought at the time. Looking back now with clear eyes, I realize I was wearing rose-colored glasses the entire relationship. Sarah came from a family that was obsessed with appearances, tradition, and money. Her mother, Evelyn, was the ultimate matriarch, always micromanaging everyone's lives, obsessed with family legacy, and constantly dropping hints about how important it was to have a male heir to carry on the family prestige. I never really bought into any of that nonsense. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood, lost my dad when I was young, and was raised by a mom who taught me that hard work, love, and integrity are the only things that actually matter in this life. But I loved Sarah, so I brushed off her mother's bizarre comments. When Sarah got pregnant after 3 years of marriage, I was over the moon. I didn't care about the baby's gender, I just wanted a healthy baby and a happy family. During the pregnancy, Sarah and Evelyn became completely obsessed with the idea of having a boy. Evelyn started buying blue clothes, setting up a sports-themed nursery, and constantly talking about the young prince. Sarah wouldn't even discuss girl names. When I asked her what we'd name the baby if it was a girl, she'd just roll her eyes and say, "Don't be ridiculous, Mark. It's going to be a boy. My family always gets what it wants." They even refused to find out the gender during the ultrasound because they wanted it to be a grand reveal at birth. I thought it was weird, but I stayed quiet just to keep the peace. Fast forward to the day of delivery. Sarah went into labor on a rainy Tuesday night. I was right there by her side in the delivery room, holding her hand, encouraging her through every single contraction. After hours of intense labor, our baby was finally born. The doctor held up the baby, smiled warmly, and said, "Congratulations! It's a beautiful, healthy baby girl." I burst into tears of pure joy. I looked at this tiny, perfect little creature, and my heart instantly doubled in size. I looked over at Sarah, expecting to see tears of happiness in her eyes too. Instead, her face was completely blank, cold, disgusted. She turned her head away and didn't say a single word. When the nurse handed me our daughter, whom I ended up naming Maya, I cradled her in my arms, feeling an overwhelming urge to protect her from the world. 2 days later, we were discharged from the hospital. When we got home, I carried Maya in her car seat into the living room. Sarah walked in right behind me, followed closely by her mother, Evelyn. I was getting ready to put Maya in her crib so I could make Sarah some soup. But before I could even take 2 steps, Sarah reached into her designer bag, pulled out a thick yellow envelope, and literally tossed it right at my chest. The papers hit me and scattered across the floor. I froze, looking down at the papers, then back up at Sarah. "What is this?" I asked, my voice trembling. Sarah stood there with her arms crossed, her eyes totally dead. "Those are divorce papers," she said coldly. "Sign them." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Sarah, what are you talking about? We just brought our baby home." That's when she looked at Maya in my arms, sneered, and uttered words I will never forget for the rest of my life. I wanted a son, not a useless little girl. Evelyn stepped up right behind Sarah, crossed her arms, and nodded in agreement. "We have a family legacy to uphold, Mark," Evelyn said in a sickeningly sweet voice. "A girl doesn't carry the family line. Sarah needs a husband who can give her a proper heir. Take the baby and leave." I stood there in complete shock. My blood ran cold, then boiled with rage, but looking down at my sweet, innocent baby girl sleeping peacefully in my arms, the anger just turned into a crystal clear realization. These people are monsters, and my daughter deserves so much better. I looked Sarah dead in the eye and said, "Fine, if you don't want her, she's mine. You don't deserve her anyway." I didn't argue, I didn't beg. I packed up Maya's clothes, her formula, a few bags of my own stuff, and I walked out of that house without looking back. The legal battle that followed was surreal. Sarah didn't want joint custody. In fact, she signed away her parental rights with almost zero fight during the divorce proceedings, provided she wouldn't have to pay hefty child support. Her high-powered lawyer worked out an agreement where I received full legal and physical custody, and she paid a bare minimum monthly amount just to avoid going to court. She wiped her hands clean of us, moved back in with her mother, and completely erased Maya and me from her life. The first 2 years were absolute hell. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was working as a junior project manager at a mid-sized construction firm, making decent money, but nowhere near enough to comfortably raise an infant alone while paying rent and childcare costs. I barely slept. I was waking up every 3 hours to feed Maya, changing diapers, rushing to work, grinding out 9-hour days, running back to daycare, and then coming home to clean, cook, and do it all over again. There were nights I would sit on the kitchen floor at 2 a.m. holding a crying Maya, crying right along with her out of sheer exhaustion and fear. But every time I looked into my daughter's big, bright eyes, I found a well of strength I didn't know I had. I swore to myself that I would build a life for her where she would never feel unloved, unwanted, or second best. When Maya turned 3, things started to change. I took a massive risk and used the small savings I had left to start my own residential contracting business. I worked 18-hour days. I took on small repair jobs, kitchen remodels, deck builds, anything I could get my hands on. I treated every client with absolute honesty, delivered top-tier work, and slowly, word of mouth spread. By the time Maya was 5, my company had grown exponentially. I hired a team, took on commercial contracts, and started investing in local real estate. Within 4 years, I went from struggling to pay rent to buying a beautiful 4-bedroom house with a huge backyard, a tire swing, and a golden retriever for Maya. Maya grew into the smartest, funniest, most loving little girl you could ever meet. She loved soccer, drawing, and helping me build things with her plastic tool set. She was my whole world. Meanwhile, I occasionally heard updates about Sarah through mutual acquaintances, though I never sought them out. Apparently, after our divorce, Sarah and Evelyn set their sights on finding Sarah a wealthy, high-status husband who could give them the son they so desperately wanted. Within a year, Sarah married a guy named Richard, a wealthy guy from a prominent local family who ran a luxury auto dealership. From what I heard, Richard was arrogant, controlling, and obsessed with status. Perfect match for Sarah and Evelyn, right? About a year into their marriage, Sarah got pregnant. Evelyn threw a massive, over-the-top gender reveal party. They hired a skywriter, invited hundreds of people, and posted it all over social media. And guess what? It was a boy. They were over the moon. They named him Preston. Sarah and Evelyn posted endlessly about their perfect little heir. For a while, it seemed like Sarah got everything she ever wanted, while I was left in the dust. But life has a very funny way of balancing the scales. Fast forward to 3 months ago, my construction company won a massive contract to renovate a high-end commercial plaza in the wealthy part of town, the exact area where Sarah, Richard, and Evelyn lived. I was visiting the site one afternoon dressed in my usual work gear, dark jeans, a fitted polo shirt, a hard hat, and steel-toed boots. My company truck was parked outside and I was doing a walkthrough with my site manager. As I walked toward a high-end cafe on the corner to grab a coffee, I bumped straight into 2 women walking out. It was Sarah and Evelyn. We stopped dead in our tracks. It had been nearly 6 full years since I last saw them face to face. Sarah looked different. She had heavy makeup on, but she looked exhausted and stressed. Evelyn had aged significantly, looking tense and bitter. When Sarah recognized me in my work boots and dusty jeans, a smirk immediately crept onto her face. "Well, well, well," Sarah sneered, looking me up and down. "Look who it is. Mark. Still playing in the dirt, I see." Evelyn chuckled, clutching her designer handbag. "Some people just never rise above their station." "Sarah, dear, it's in their blood." I just stood there, completely calm. 6 years ago, their words would have crushed me. Now, they meant absolutely nothing. "Hello, Sarah. Evelyn," I said politely. Sarah crossed her arms, looking smug. "So, how is, what was her name again? The little girl? I assume you're barely getting by, working construction trades. It must be so tough being a broke single dad." Before I could even answer, a brand new Mercedes SUV pulled up to the curb. Out stepped a man in a tailored suit holding a little boy who looked to be around 4 years old. It was Richard and their son, Preston. Richard walked up looking annoyed. "Sarah, hurry up. My mother is waiting for us at the country club, and Preston is throwing a tantrum again." The little boy, Preston, immediately started screaming at the top of his lungs, kicking Richard and screaming, "I don't want to go! You're stupid! I hate you!" He literally hit Richard in the face. Sarah looked embarrassed and tried to grab the boy, but he kicked her too, screaming at her to let him go. Evelyn tried to intervene, but the kid threw a full-blown meltdown on the sidewalk, spitting and yelling profanities that no 4-year-old should even know. Richard glared at Sarah. "Control your son. He's a spoiled brat because you and your mother indulge his every whim." "My son?" Sarah snapped back. "He gets his temper from your side of the family." Right at that exact moment, my site manager, Dave, walked out of the coffee shop holding 2 sundaes. Following right behind him was my daughter, Maya. Maya was 6 years old now, wearing a cute yellow sundress, her hair tied in pigtails, holding a drawing she had just finished for me. When she saw me, her face lit up with the purest, sweetest smile. "Daddy?" she called out, running over to me. I instantly bent down, caught her in my arms, and lifted her up, holding her close just like I used to when she was a baby. "Hey, Sweet Pea, did you get your ice cream?" "Yes, and I drew a picture of our new house with a giant garden for Barnaby," she said proudly, handing me the paper. I kissed her forehead. "You're the smartest, sweetest girl in the world, kiddo." Sarah, Evelyn, and Richard all stopped arguing and stared at us. Sarah's eyes locked onto Maya. Maya was breathtakingly beautiful, polite, happy, and clearly adored me. You could instantly tell the contrast between Maya's gentle, loving nature and the chaotic, screaming spectacle that was their son. Evelyn stared at Maya in absolute shock. Is that... Before Evelyn could finish her sentence, the developer of the commercial plaza, an extremely wealthy businessman named Arthur, walked up to me with a huge smile, holding out his hand. "Mark, there you are," Arthur said loudly, shaking my hand warmly. "I was just telling my board members about your firm. Guys, this is Mark, the owner of Apex Construction. He's the genius rebuilding this entire $15 million development, plus his firm just bought out the new residential sector downtown." Sarah's jaw literally dropped. Evelyn looked like she had just swallowed a lemon. Richard looked at me, then at Arthur, completely stunned. "Wait, you're Mark, the CEO of Apex?" I smiled politely at Richard. "Yes, I am. Nice to meet you." Arthur patted my shoulder. "Mark is one of the most successful contractors and real estate investors in the state." "And who is this little princess?" Arthur asked, smiling at Maya. "This is my daughter, Maya," I said proudly, looking directly at Sarah. "She's the light of my life, my entire motivation, and the smartest kid I know. Everything I build is for her." Maya wrapped her tiny arms around my neck and whispered, "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, sweet pea," I replied. The silence on that sidewalk was deafening. Sarah looked at Maya, then at me, then down at my luxury watch, and finally at my developer partner. The realization hit her like a freight train. She had thrown away a loving husband, a gorgeous, brilliant daughter, and a life of incredible stability and wealth, all because of her backward, sexist obsession with having a son. And now she was trapped in a miserable marriage with a man who resented her, raising a child who was wildly out of control, while her mother watched her family legacy crumble into a chaotic nightmare. Evelyn tried to speak. "Mark, we didn't know you were doing so well." I didn't let her finish. I looked at both of them with complete indifference. No anger, no bitterness, just pure peace. "It doesn't matter what you knew, Evelyn," I said calmly. "You both thought my daughter was useless, but she turned out to be my greatest blessing. Have a nice day." I turned my back on them, held Maya's hand, and walked away toward my truck. As we walked away, I could hear Richard yelling at Sarah in the background, Preston screaming at the top of his lungs, and Sarah quietly sobbing on the sidewalk. Looking down at Maya eating her ice cream, smiling up at me without a care in the world, I knew right then and there. Karma doesn't always come instantly, but when it hits, it delivers absolute perfection. What a story, right? It just goes to show that genuine love and hard work will always triumph over greed and cruelty in the end. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more crazy, real-life Reddit stories just like this one, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, smash subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Drop a comment down below and let me know what you thought about Sarah and Evelyn getting what they deserved. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.